I made a wrong button. Just okay. I had to do a little bit of music
Is there a
here.
chat function?
Ah, I'm having a little problem today. I pressed the wrong button and um, just 1 second.
Hmm. I'm unmuted.
Can you hear me? Can you?
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
But can you hear me? Can you hear
Only
me?
on my no, I can't.
So that's your speaker somewhere.
Oh, now you're gone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you at all. You're gone. My phone disconnected again.
Yeah,
from
I
you.
disconnected it. You need to check your.
I can't hear you at all. I know you're talking to me though. So interesting. Okay, what am I missing?
There is a setting in your speaker phones. Your speaker phone raise the volume.
It's too loud?
No, it's not. You can't hear me because that you can't hear me because I can hear you, but you can't hear me because your speaker phone or something is your speaker phone is your output setting is not right.
Huh. Okay. Let me see here.
Raise the volume of the speaker.
The volume on my laptop is up. It is actually as high as it goes. And yeah, I don't have you muted, so I'm looking to see here if there's any.
Go to setting. Are you on the MacBook or are you on the
MacBook? Yeah. Yep.
MacBook? Yeah. Go to the sound settings. Sound setting.
Yep.
You need to go to sound settings and output is you put the laptop in a speaker.
Let me see here. Input volume, output. Let's try that. Okay, now talk to me.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Damn. No.
So
okay.
you're not.
Let me try that again.
Right?
Yeah. Now I just have you on the phone. I wonder if I disconnect my microphone. Let's try that.
Yeah, microphone. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. No, I got you. Now, can you hear my microphone?
I can hear you everything.
Okay, so I'm going to hang up from the phone and let me see.
Yeah, can you hear me on my? Yeah.
Okay, can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, Joshua, 1 second, okay? Give me 1 second.
Sure.
We're having a problem technical. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah. I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. We're up. We're finally up and running, my friend.
Okay.
Took a while. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, it's actually I made a mistake. I went live. Actually, we're all talking live, because it's going to go down, in a minute.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm going to put you in the. Give me 1 second. We have a little bit of technical problem here. I'm going to put in the background. Don't touch any buttons, okay? Don't touch any buttons.
Promise.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
So Joshua, don't touch any button. Can you hear me, Joshua?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. So don't touch any buttons. I'll put you in the second segment. So stay there for a while and you can watch the program with me. Okay. That is Jill McMahon. How do you say, Jill? Your name is
It's
McMahon, right?
McMahon. It's
McMahon.
McMahon.
Good. Joshua is easier.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that, my pronunciation.
Hello, Gio. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
Joshua. How are you?
Excellent.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah.
Likewise, yeah.
It's late for Joshua. What is it, 8 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
9.
9. Holy smokes. I'm in bed by 9, gentlemen.
You come here.
Joshua, Do you know that
Yes.
music? The lady who is singing, the, the lady who is singing there, she's from Atlanta.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was in the she's from Atlanta, Georgia. She was with the Annie. She toured with Annie all over the world.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm going to put you in the background. Don't touch any buttons, okay? So just
Sure.
stay there. I'm going to put you in the background a little bit. So down backstage. So don't touch any buttons. I will bring you into the front line.
Netflix on the screen, healthcare in between. Physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need bridge blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix. Maybrick's got the fix. Complex
benefits
subjects made
right
clear.
now
Every episode
in ways that we actually acquire the
Ramona
business
leads the way.
and ways that
Explaining
make
day
me
by
more
day.
efficient.
In the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges.
Hey, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Ramana Annamaraju. Yes, I'm the host. Welcome to the MedBix Webcast. I'm going to interview a trauma counselor today. The gun violence, but I say, actually, I'm going to add one more technology term, technology trauma. We all have it. I'm from Silicon Valley. I'm having a technology trauma today. I have my major. The main monitor got shot, and then all kinds of problems. It's very funny that the trauma is not just limited to the gun violence only. We have a technology. People have a traumas too. It may be sophisticated, but it's trauma still. But anyway, this is a CDC, actually, Center for Disease Control. They last year 2022. They mentioned before also that gun violence is the public health concern. But it's a big problem in our societies. In particularly American society. This is a huge problem. 2022, 48,000 people died. And then we can talk about suicides also. A lot of times people think mass shootings by kids that are killing people. Actually, most of the guns are killed by the suicide they use in suicide most of the time. That's very strange. One of the my friends, one of the acquaintance son from a technology from Silicon Valley shot himself in 2 months ago. Here, he's an OpenAI. He's working for an OpenAI company. He shot himself. He's 22 years old. I don't know what goes through in their mind, but that is a very that's one of the things is that the gun violence, people kill themselves. So CDC actually for a lot of years, the political system or whatever the system it is that they have, they don't want to collect any data. They didn't fund any. They didn't fund any CDC collecting any data on the gun violence. They started recently. That was surprise. Still it's still not 100% there. National Violent Death Reporting System, CDC, started recently. That is about the gun violence reporting. So it is a huge problem. I tell you that not only people who shot themselves and kill themselves or kill other people, and their communities and everything is affected by entire communities and nation at the end, national. So it affects everybody involved. So we need to focus on that. What is the really people who survived this, that the trauma, the families and societies and friends. We know somebody in our family, somebody with the suicide or somebody with the gun violence, victim of gun violence. We know all of them. So I think it's a time to really make a different focus on it, and then recognize it and get the seek therapies. That's what I'm going to talk about. Jill McMahon, she's a very celebrated therapist. She is the author of a great book. She wrote a book called, let me tell you what the book, Bulletproof: Healing After Gun Violence. That's the best, beautiful, beautiful title. So that's a right fitting for this kind of a talk. So she is a therapist and she is a speaker, national speaker, well known. So I think let me bring her to the main stage, and let her introduce herself. Hey, welcome, Jill. Welcome to the Medbix Upcast.
Good evening, Ramana. Thank you for the introduction. You did well.
Yeah, just give me some background of yours, if you don't mind, a little bit more.
Um, so I'm actually have spent the last 20 years of my career specializing in working with friends and families that have lost a family member to suicide. So I'm a suicide loss specialist. I'm a grief and trauma specialist as well, but I've just kind of decided that where I really want to focus the rest of my career would be on gun violence and gun violence survivors and helping them heal, providing a guide for young clinicians, the caregivers that are left behind to help their family members and their friends heal, and the survivors themselves. Because as you just said, Ramana, we have a community or a society that in some ways has pushed this population to the back. And there isn't a lot of funding or data out there, but instead the topic becomes very politicized. And once we start talking political speak, when it comes to this horrible tragedy, we lose the voice and the impact of what the survivor is going through. So I'm trying to bring some light back to this survivor.
Jill, just let me, before I come in, I wanted to ask you, what is the book is all about? You wrote the book, and so give us some background on the book that you wrote. What inspired you to write that book, and really, just what caused you that writing a book is, I didn't write a book. Oh my God, you have to bleed. So tell me, tell me what really is.
As I'm rolling my eyes, I learned the hard way that writing a book is no small feat. It's probably one of the things that I am most proud of accomplishing in my lifetime thus far. So, I'll tell you that. To answer your question, I suspect what you're getting at as to what called me to do this work is to share with your audience that I myself am a gun violence survivor. So my mother and I experienced a gun violence incident when I was just a young girl. I was 6 or 7 years old. The world of psychology and therapy was all very, very different back in that day. But it is something that is woven into every cell of who I am. It is something that I understand firsthand. And I'm going to say, for probably the first third of my life, I didn't know what to do with that, really, right? I just knew that it was an impactful part of my development. And then I got into this trauma work. And as you said before about suicide, 51% of suicides are by firearm. So over half. So when I really stepped back for a minute and I looked at my world every day, I realized how much of what I do on a daily basis revolves around
Yeah.
gun
You,
violence.
I want to ask you that if you're 6 year old and then you have that trauma that you see that gun violence,
Yeah.
think about the now the mass shootings in the school
Yeah.
systems, and then a lot of teacher, the kids go through a lot of pressure. What are the teachers also? One of the segment we ignore completely is the teachers. They come to the everyday work, and how much fear they have in that they have that kind of a trauma that they need to go through that chronic condition, probably that is.
I love that you brought that up, because I spent a lot of time recently on that topic. And I would consider teachers our secondary victims of our country. They, all probably thought that they were going into education to form the minds of the young kids to do right by the next population, to help develop and grow and watch them expand. But what I think they are all realizing, if they haven't realized before, is that we are also leaning on them to, at times, save the lives of our children, to protect them, to know how to respond in an active shooting situation. One of the characters in my book, I interviewed several people, and one of them was a teacher. And I actually interviewed her in the book because her daughter was a student at a high school where there was a shooting. And
Hmm.
so I really wanted the angle of the caregiver. What was it like for you to try to love her out of this, to try to provide the support and the safety that she psychologically needed for all of those years after the shooting? And what I learned in my interview with her is that she is also a teacher, the mom, now currently. And on the day I interviewed her, they had a drill, a shooting drill. And in the background, you could hear sirens and, the alarm that said, run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight. And gosh, I kept thinking to myself, what kind of trauma response is that causing right there? Right. So, what we're asking our teachers to do in 2025 and beyond is harrowing.
It's a total tragedy in that sense. I heard somewhere they wear the clothes because they don't know which day they get shot. There is somebody comes in and shooting people, so they wear comfortable clothes like a pants, and because they can run faster. So it's a psychological way of creating that mindset. It's just horrible in that sense. You have to wear every day, think about, hey, there will be maybe a mass shooting today, so I'm going to be wearing a different my comfortable clothes, the same clothes that I can run faster or something like that. it
Or
doesn't it
I
is
don't know if
really
you
another
I don't know if you saw
layer of trauma.
The Newsweek article about the young teacher that wears a cardigan every day.
Yeah,
And she wears a cardigan every day, so that if she needs to, she can tear it off, or she can take it off quickly and wrap it around one of her students as a tourniquet in case there's a shooting in their school. That is the state of our education. That is the state of our hypervigilance and our fear. And I love that you bring that amazing population up, because it just, I think, speaks to the audience about how vast of an issue this really is.
It's a chronic false alarms, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it is not only you're putting entire society, the teachers, the students, and students' parents, and all of them societies. It is truly a it's a kind of a tragedy. So what are the measures? What kind of how do you deal with somebody who went through it, suppose a gun violence? What is the treatment protocols, and how do you treat them, and what is your steps you take usually give to them?
First and foremost, I think it's important for everybody to realize that over 50% of adults in the United States have been impacted in some way by a gun violence incident. 1 out of 5 would tell you that they have either witnessed a gun violence incident themselves or have lost a family member to a gun incident. And so, what I recommend doing when working with that population, and I'm going to say, of course, you have to know the culture that you're working with. You have to appreciate the culture that you're working with, their family systems, their support systems. I'm not going to walk into an urban area and, provide support in the same way that I'm going to walk into a rural area and provide support. That's important to take note. But I would say I'd like to educate people right away on what the physical and mental neurological impacts of trauma are. Because what I've heard over and over again after people experience a sudden loss or trauma is this feeling that they're going crazy, that they're losing it, that they're different than everyone else. Now, mind you, this population already feels isolated because they have a story that they don't feel many people can relate to. Right. And there still is a stigma. And so people around their coworkers aren't making eye contact with George and saying, George, tell me about your trauma. Right. The coworker instead is looking to the side when George passes by or gives him a pat on the back, but doesn't want to talk about it. So they already feel a little isolated, extremely detached and misunderstood. So the first thing I'm going to do is build rapport, and then I'm going to explain to them what is really occurring biologically and physically after you experience a trauma. And I will tell you, if you start there, it is amazing how much relief that in and of itself provides a survivor, even a caregiver. So the caregivers to me are also a forgotten population. It's your grandparents that are looking after you, or your spouse that doesn't know how to best help you, or even your boss that doesn't quite know how to approach you. It could be your physician, in all honesty. So having somebody explain to you that you are in fight or flight, what the adrenal system does to the body, how you are hypervigilant and you're just waiting for the next shoe to drop, why you're forgetful and you have fog brain, which I call Swiss cheese brain, why you all of a sudden can't remember how to get home, or you can't get out of bed. Or so once I explain that those things are real, they're biological. You haven't created this victimhood, right? That there is like this huge weight that lifts off their shoulders when we start there. And then I slowly, I just implore that they talk about it. We have to clean out their trash can.
Jill, let me switch the topic a little bit about suicide.
Please.
I am in Silicon Valley. There's
Mhm.
a few miles from here, like 5 miles from here, Palo Alto. One of these high schools is a very intense. The large number of suicides actually is very notorious in the Silicon Valley high schools, because these kids have academic pressures, they have this competitive pressures, and they come in to go to the railway, the train, in front of a train, and a lot of commit suicides. It's a huge problem. Is it society? What the society can do is creating this unnecessary pressure on the academic side, or we are really, the health should be health should come first, right? Is not the education or anything else. If it is not serving that purpose, I think that we need to rethink about our priorities. So tell us a little bit about the kids' suicidal thoughts and suicides, and then a lot of times, how they, as a therapist, how do you recognize these kind of conditions with the students?
Well, what you bring up, Ramana, is something that I think you and I know that health comes first over academia, over accomplishments. Do I think that the rest of the population is starting to realize that? Yes, post-pandemic, but we have a long way to go. We need to start realizing that it is valid that our children are under far more pressure than we ever were. We need to stop comparing ourselves or our childhood strife to the strife of kids today. They're not even on the same plane. So please don't do that. And we need to stop putting their extracurriculars and their GPA and their college admission ahead of their happiness, I think we're starting to get it, because we do realize that we have a real mental health crisis with young adults on our hands right now. You asked a question that's a great question, but it's hard to answer. And that is, how do we notice or recognize when our adolescents are hurting? The reason historically that it's always been so challenging to diagnose or recognize when a teenager is suicidal is because by nature they're erratic at that age. They have chemical emotional ups and downs. It is not uncommon for them to stay in their bedrooms for days at a time and stream a show. I mean, I have 2 kids. They did all of those things, right? It's not uncommon for them to experiment with drugs and alcohol. It's not uncommon for them to fall in love. It's not uncommon for them to be hurt by their friends. But I implore the people around them to not take any of those activities for granted and just provide a safe space for your child to speak and to really have an opinion about how they're feeling. So if you're talking about a school in Palo Alto, right? We all have an image of what you're talking about, but I will tell you, every community has one of those schools.
Yes. Yes.
And so everybody in this country, doesn't matter where you are, you have a school in your community that's a high achieving school. We need to just sit down and go, why are we pushing so hard? What do we fear? Parents are fearing that their child is going to be left behind because all the other children are going to get the fruit on the tree and they're not. And you have to start realizing it's not about the fruit on the tree. That's short term. It's about the fruit on the table for life. And that comes from in here.
The biggest challenge is not only the student, the kids go to the pediatrician and primary care physicians. Are they? I'm not sure they are trained enough to recognize the suicidal thoughts from these kids. That's one thing that I think there must be some education, re-education about that kind of things. Do you agree with that? My assessment of that.
I know that the state of education, at least here in Arizona, which is very different, I can only speak to Arizona, we started cutbacks about 10 years ago, and we cut back psychologists in schools an enormous amount. If there's a school psychologist in our county, she or he is going to be traveling amongst different schools. And again, we have a mental health episode crisis, I would say, on our hands with young adults. I see it in my office all of the time. And so we're watching the crisis numbers go up and the assistance numbers in the schools go down. So let's go back to the teachers you were asking about earlier. Not only are the teachers preparing, being hyper vigilant, watching all of the exits and entrances into their classroom, knowing how to do an active shooter drill, telling their children to hover in the corner, they're also becoming many mental health professionals. That's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
fair.
I tell you some of my interesting background that I had. I used to teach in New York, in Manhattan, when I was going through a student life. I was doing finishing degree, and a lot of these people came from Bronx. They recruited people with the troubled children. They recruited them. They used to bring guns to the class.
Wow.
That. But one thing I learned is I changed them. That I really created interest in electronics and how to prepare camera. Immediately, these kids turned around, and in fact, they changed. When I left the place, they went on a strike to tell the principal they want me back.
Yeah.
So I think that there are children. Doesn't matter what they. If you address them right way and tap their potentials, recognize their good things, I think people change. That's my own experience. Actually, that is.
It's beautiful.
One of the thing is that the Luigi Maggiano, the guy up there, he took a 3D printed gun, and then he took up violence. I don't know, injustice in the healthcare system, understandable, but he went there and he took a violence as an option. What do you think of that violence? And I'm going to bring this kind of people with the anger and frustration. How did they do that? Another person going to join with me is a Joshua Bird. He's coming from Atlanta, Georgia. I had a very interesting thing with the Joshua, because I was visiting Atlanta with my friends. I was invited guest for the conference through my friend. It is a gun violence. He is a Joshua. Conducted a gun violence seminar with the the Morehouse School of Medicine. So in that medicine, what I surprised, the statistics are staggering. What they said was that 60% of the people who are coming to ER are the gun victims. Let me bring him onto the table.
Please.
Joshua, you can explain better for me than let me bring him there. The Joshua. Hey, welcome, Joshua. Welcome to the Medbix webcast.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me, and excited about being here, and thank you so much for the work that you do day in and day out, and week in and week out, and over the years, what you've been able to compile with respect to your show. So it's definitely a privilege to be on this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Tell us, Joshua, that, Jill is talking about the violence, and then both you can comment on anger. So first, Jill, I'll let you comment on the anger that guy has, Gilugi Maggiano, that anger you showed into the violence. Then we'll talk about the young people anger and frustrations. We'll talk with Joshua. Go ahead, and Jill, if you can comment on that.
So and I'm so curious to hear what Joshua's point of view is on this as well. But my assumptions, and they're just that, they're assumptions, right? Is that we have a young man who supposedly was experiencing chronic pain. And chronic pain really is a factor in mental wellness. It is also a factor in suicidality. So I've always had this philosophy, just in doing the work that I've done for 20 years, that typically a mass shooting or a shooting that is so public like that is a homicide before it's a suicide. So I suspect that he was prepared that he may not come back, that he may not come out of that. I suspect that he was in the middle of his own mental health crisis. Again, we're all just speculating at this point. But when I look at that situation, I can point out several factors that lead to the end result.
Joshua, you do a great work in the gun violence. You deal with the young. Atlanta is the epicenter of these problems. This is I know Atlanta very well. Atlanta is a beautiful city. But there is some problem that the young people. This gun violence is a big problem there. Tell us a little bit. Why that anger, frustration. Tell us your take on that process.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I'd like to just give a shout out to one of your colleagues, Miss Phillips with A Reach. And she always says, if you can ease the mind, you can reduce the crime. And so just that statement alone is impactful, but because it talks about what young folks, middle age, older folks, just people in general are dealing with. And if you can deal with what's going on in their minds, a lot of this can be resolved. So it really starts there. Really much like Jill, at the age of 7, I witnessed a murder. I never talked about it until my 30s. I was held at gunpoint in my teens. I witnessed in high school classmates, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, shot and paralyzed, shot and killed. And so much of my upbringing was around that. And I slowly began to notice in my 30s that a lot of what I've been endeavoring to do, whether it's the military, the Marine Corps, the sheriff's office in DeKalb County here, working in law, pursuing a law degree, going to law school, and then working as an attorney there, and now as a criminal justice professor. What I've essentially been seeking to do, I've come to understand, is just protect our communities and my younger self. And so when you talk about the gun violence and what's going on, oftentimes what we're really dealing with are environments, cultural norms. How do you deal with the problem? A lot of that, if I'm honest with myself, was impacted by the media. A lot of the music that I listen to today, we've got social media, we've got television that many youth don't really watch a lot of mainstream television. But the idea is that a lot of this is learned behavior. And so what we're about with respect to why I'm on today representing the 100 Black Men of Atlanta is we have an awareness campaign and a model. And what we've modeled it after is the same thing that the CDC did in the United States government did with respect to seatbelts, cigarette smoking, and here most recently, the COVID-19 global pandemic. What did they do? Everywhere you went, wear a mask. Everywhere you went, social distance. What they were doing was public education. Here's how we're going to deal with COVID-19. Similarly, we're calling on a national designation of gun violence as a public health emergency so that those funds are allocated to the general public so that we can start to address this. But you did ask a question. What does gun violence look like and how is it really occurring and happening? Well, what we do know is that there are approximately 50,000 deaths a year related to gun violence. Many of those are homicides. Jill just mentioned many of those are also suicides. And so what I say is that if you know of a teenager, we're talking 10 to the preteen, the emerging adults, really 10 to 19. If you know of a teenager, whether you're a teacher, football, basketball, swim coach, little league, whatever the case may be, grandparent, mom or dad, you should be concerned about gun violence because that is, if you have a teenager or adolescents, if they're going to die at that age, the leading cause of death is gun violence. But there's also another side of that. As we talk about suicide, and Jill raised some alarming statistics, white males are, the leading, individuals who you would see committing suicides from state to state. And I believe in Georgia, we're talking about 60%. But the idea is that whether it's suicide with white males leading many of those categories, or this homicide with adolescents, and on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Black males who are 18 times more likely to die to gun violence than their white counterparts. It's an all hands on deck issue. It's all of us, and it requires all of us. And so we do need the federal government to come in and declare a public health emergency to release those funds. But short of that, what are we doing? There are a lot of community organizations such as the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, where you and I met, where I chair the Violence Prevention Committee for our Atlanta chapter. And we'll be having a violence prevention symposium just next week at Emory University with the Satcher Health Leadership Institute, the Morehouse School of Medicine, and the King Center. And we're so grateful for the sponsorship from Kaiser. But it's a lot going on. But a lot of it, I would say, starts with environment. And from there, a lot of the conflict resolution and de-escalation training that we teach helps students and individuals maneuver those environments and gives them some real skills that they can wake up in the morning and start to utilize, from reflection to being aware of everything, to being prepared for what they're going to do and what they're going to say, to being intentional about making sure that they're prepared, and then the discipline to do that day in and day out. That's a rapid solution that I've come up with my company, Teach Us. And that rapid solution, I think, can really help go a long way towards peace within an individual or society, peacefully engaging and communicating with everyone.
So, Jill, you're very beautifully said, Joshua. I mean, you articulated very well that.
Where's
Jill,
Joshua's fan page?
Yeah.
I'm on. Sign me up.
Yeah, you did articulate very well. Jill, so it doesn't matter what race the trauma is same and the therapy. So we have enough therapists and counselors like you, Jill, and we need Joshua's, lots of them. Do we have enough resources in this country to really face this kind of a violence in the trauma and the violence and treat this mental catastrophe that are coming onto our way?
That's a double-pronged question. And so I'm going to lean on Joshua for part of it. Do we have enough therapists? Yes, we do. Do we have enough resources? No. That's it, right? Those are two different topics, and resources are being taken away from us daily right now when it comes to gun violence prevention. I will not make this webinar political, but I'm just going to tell you that daily resources are being taken away from us right now that are not going to make the numbers dwindle. They're going to make the numbers grow. And so I love so much about what Joshua said and about what Joshua's mission is. And I would love to hear him scream it from a megaphone, because it starts within. It starts at home. It starts with the coaches. It starts with the teachers. I don't want to task more on the teachers, but it starts with Uncle Bob. It starts with your next door neighbor, and just it starts with safe storage. I mean, what Joshua said is so right, that we have to heal what's in here, ultimately systemically, to solve the problem. However, that's a long haul, right? And those are slow steps. But for now, safe storage is key. I don't know if either one of you saw it, and I'm so remiss that I don't have the name of the article, but there was an article that just came out this week with a study, 2023 study in New Jersey, and of everybody surveyed, that they were all firearm owners, 60% of them admitted that they do not keep their firearms stored away, at least one firearm stored away and safe at home. They may have multiple firearms, but at least one they keep handy. And of that 60%, all of them said because they don't fear any type of suicidal behavior in their home. Well, I've spent 20 years of my life sitting next to families who have lost a family member to suicide. And I'm going to tell you, those individuals didn't see suicide in their home either. So, I mean, there's so many angles we can come at from this.
Joshua, there is another angle to the black community, which is that, I'm from India. I never seen a gun in my entire life in India. High school, I never seen a gun. We don't know anybody who shot by gun. I never know entire my life there in India when I was growing up. So I didn't know not even a single person that got shot in India. Okay. So maybe I had one or two suicides. Maybe they used to do pesticides and they drink a pesticide, and that's a very rare one person in entire my life I had. But here it's so common. It became I don't know what is a frustration among the black community. Tell me a little bit of injustice maybe is a possibility there, and also the family structure, and then father is one of the things I saw that you were promoting a father intervention of the fathers. Tell us a little bit about that, Joshua.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, Jill. Safe storage is key. But to answer your question, the idea is this. Here are the numbers. There are about 48,000 folks die with respect to gun violence annually. Now, the lion's share of those deaths are from suicides. And what's not, again, noticed, notated, or really spoken upon as frequently as it needs to be is that white males are the leading victims of gun violence. Let's be clear. Now, what we're dealing with respect to the African American community is not that more African Americans are dying as a result of gun violence. It's just that based on the population of African Americans in this country, the rate at which they're dying and we're dying is disproportionate. Again, so if gun violence is a leading cause of death for adolescents, you would think it would be equal across the board, but it is not. Black males are 18 times more likely to die to gun violence than white males. That doesn't mean that more black males are dying, but the likelihood of that smaller percentage of black males are. So what is the cause? And what I would say is, it's quite clear as someone who served in the military, in the Marine Corps, and in law enforcement, and I've got a master's degree in criminal justice, a bachelor's degree, a law degree, and now I'm working on a doctoral degree in cybersecurity. I'm relatively well educated, and I know that very few, if any, manufacturers of guns are African Americans. So we're not making the guns. We're not bringing them to the community. And so what it really is, it's a societal problem. It's a systemic problem that really ends up impacting disproportionately those who are impoverished oftentimes. But oftentimes it deals with a lot of what Jill was talking about, the educational systems and the environments. And so as you start to think about why do we have certain types of crimes, you start to look at things like what the environments are in those neighborhoods, and what the mentality of those individuals are. And a lot of those deal with, and our good colleague with the Atlanta chapter, former chair Larry Johnson, always talk about the social determinants of health. You're dealing with a population of people who don't have access to folks, like the Jills of the world, mental health. They don't have the health care. They don't have the food. They don't have the housing. And as you put all of that together and compound it, it leads to people making poorer decisions more quickly and disproportionately as compared to individuals who might have a meal every night and might be able to go to a counselor to stave off a bad decision, might be able to go to a hospital to get checked out. And so, in my experience, and you start looking at criminological theory and why do people commit crimes, I don't think that it's a racial component really there. It's just disproportionate as you start to look overall at those social determinants of health and what certain communities have and don't have that makes the Black community or the African American community in this country a little bit more vulnerable and susceptible to these types of violence. But to be clear, as you look at these mass school shootings, I think it's obvious that that is not an African American issue with respect to gun violence. I don't think that there's been, a lot. I can't even name one that's been won, with respect to African American communities as compared to the white or Caucasian community. So there are different, different analysis can be drawn, but for sure to answer your question, I would say those social determinants of health and all of the different things that go into one's life, livelihood, mental outlook on life, and a lot of it deals with poverty, unfortunately, and a lot of it deals with the accessibility to health care and housing and mental health. And so that is it's a fair question for sure.
Joshua,
Can I jump in really quick? I just want to
yeah,
add
go ahead. Go
that's
ahead.
the end of
Go
everything
ahead.
Joshua
Please.
said because he's so
Please.
spot on. But I interviewed with somebody else actually from India like a month ago, and it was interesting because she said the same thing you said. She's like, "This isn't a thing. Like I don't like this is so foreign to me. I'm like because your crimes of violence are by knife, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, and there's maybe like 5 in a year." It was super interesting. So take everything Joshua just said and add to that accessibility. We have an accessibility to firearms in this country that is not seen anywhere else in the world. And I love what Joshua just pointed out. And Joshua, I've never really heard it put that way, but you're spot on. It's not the African American population that is manufacturing these weapons, right? So there's a lot of money involved and there's a lot of funding. And so, there's a lot more accessibility. It's within reach to almost anybody, unfortunately.
President Trump is himself is a victim of this gun violence, right? Somebody was trying to shoot him at the fortunately survived. That's good, but this violence. I'm in Silicon Valley. I never had this Indian kid. Is a 22-year-old making excellent money. He is working for OpenAI, ChatGPT. Is working for, and then one day he bought the gun. It's unheard of in the Indian community. And then that's the influence from here. And then shot himself. That here he's a 25. He's making it's a lots of money. Everything is there for him. He's working for one of the top company in the world. And then what he did was he just committed suicide. That's what they said at least. But
I think we all can agree that money does not equate to happiness.
yeah, that is absolutely. I think that it's that communities, and I came from a very poor small village and a poor village in India, so that we were all together surviving together as a family unit. And then educate the priorities or different priorities we put together. Like gun violence and drugs and all these things are not there. I never had all those things. Now even India is getting affected slowly. The drug system is going there. The violence will follow eventually. This is a serious problem in the world. We need to address that. So what are the that you told me all the problems in this. What are the things that we can I know the political system, what we can do at the individual level, Jill, and then Joshua, you can tell me, Jill, first, what is the individual level, what we can do to prevent these kind of things, and how do you recognize among the family members or somebody with the people you know?
Well, I'm going to say that my focus specifically with the book isn't necessarily prevention because that's a tough one. You know, I really am focusing from the lens of post violence. How can we be there for those that are surviving? And I'm going to say first and foremost, can we just remember that these individuals are human?
Mhm.
Because what I've sat back and I've noticed and I've listened to is that every time I turn on the news and there's a gun violence event, no matter who it is, where it is, it oftentimes becomes a political debate. It goes straight into who was the shooter, how did he get the weapon, who screwed up, who screwed up, and we forget all about the victims. The victims are in the foreground, and then we move on to the next headline, which is 2 or 3 days later, right? And so we have this entire growing population of survivors and their caregivers that I feel are left floating out there feeling somewhat marked. They are tattooed, they are marked, they are different, and they are not getting the support they need. And that is not going to help our population because I'm going to tell you the biological and the psychological impacts. I mean, I think Joshua and I were kind of lucky. We seem to be, unless we're fooling everybody, two pretty high functioning adults, based off of some of the history that we've both had with gun violence. However, not everybody has the resources we have, possibly, right? Or has the coping skills that we have. And so that population is sliding under the radar, and that population is going to fall into some real emotional distress. And, we're at risk of having more suicides on our hands.
Joshua, public, as you said, that this gun violence is a public health issue. Mine is the healthcare media channel. That's why I was telling you that gun violence is a very concerned subject for us. That's why I attended your seminar. So tell us, how can we prevent these kind of things? What are the systemic, there's a big problem, systemic problem, but individual level, people like you, that you're doing a project success rate, as I saw that the success, one of the things that you're doing, Atlanta Black Men, 100 Black Men doing it. So tell us a little bit of the tools that you do preventing overall these kids, this kind of a violence.
Yeah, sure. And right before I do, I'll just tell you, you're exactly right, Jill, again, in that, we may seem like high functioning adults, but I am one who for sure takes advantage of and benefits from mental health therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health counselors. I dial 988. I've dialed it before, not per se for suicide prevention, but if I'm not feeling good and I'm on the way to the VA and say, hey, I need to talk to someone, I've utilized it. Everyone didn't have that opportunity or have that knowledge base. So there's a huge educational opportunity there, number one. But how do you solve it? I'm going to go back to your colleague. If you can ease the mind, you can reduce the crime. I did a special with Beth Galvin not too long ago. And what the special was, it was a 3-4 part series that dealt with an individual who was shot, and then they focused on the ER. But before that, they focused on the paramedics who took him to the ER. And at the end of it, I had some solutions. And so what I'll say is that as much as I'm articulate and I can speak here today, when you're in the car and road rage incidents occur, you name it. I was just in Silicon Valley with my family, and I was writing some of the stuff that we're talking about today. Here's how you make sure that gun violence doesn't occur. As soon as I got back to the airport, I had a backpack on. I jumped on the plane train, my backpack, I got on, I turned around, and my backpack is all up in someone's face. They pushed me and I was ready to fight. That's me who teaches this. I've taught law enforcement. I teach youth. I teach prosecutors. I teach people de-escalation and conflict resolution. So what am I telling you? We have to practice safe practices every single day. I have a rapid formula that I teach. I talked about it earlier. So that before you leave the house every day, you need to reflect. That is, I tell you to do a replay. What happened yesterday? What went right? What went wrong? How can we do it better? You know, one of the playoff football players with the Washington Commanders, the quarterback, talked about he reads defense with VR technology and double speed so that when he gets to the game, everything is slowed down.
Mm.
The idea is we have to reflect on what happened. We have to be able to read everything every day. Number two, we have to be aware. Yes, we've reflected, and now when we see it happening, we are ready for this. We're aware it's happening and we can act accordingly. So now we're prepared, the P in rapid. We're prepared. We're going to practice our actions, including responses every day. We know what we're going to encounter, whether it's a fight, whether someone cuts us off in traffic, whether someone gets our order wrong. Because what we've learned from the chief of police of Atlanta, where you were at the meeting at the pre-symposium, is that many of these incidents start from disagreements and arguments.
Mhm.
If we can reduce those, we can reduce a lot of this gun violence. So let's be prepared for when these things happen and be intentional about it. And then ultimately be disciplined every day. And so we really preach and practice healthy behaviors, making sure that you're eating breakfast so that you're not hangry when you get in the car and get in traffic. Work out, go to the gym, write poetry, journal, whatever it is to help you be ease the mind, reduce the crime. And so really that's a big part of many of these incidents. They start over arguments and fights. As you turn on the news and watch every night, if we can reduce the arguments, if we can reduce the fights, many of these instances can be reduced. And then when you talk about suicide, if we can let folks know what the resources are, to include, as Jill eloquently stated, the lock boxes and the gun safes, so that you're not making this rash decision. The weapon is not so accessible. And, you know, what we often find is that this is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If we can just get past those 30 seconds to 1 minute, we may be okay. And so, you know, that's what we talk about and preach, what teach us. We do the same thing with the 100 Black Men of Atlanta, a lot of the conflict resolution, de-escalation things we teach. And so, you know, there are resources. We just need more resources to reach more folks. And it would really help if it was declared a public health emergency. And so that everyone in the United States can have the same conversation and receive these same resources and conversations.
Jill, Joshua is mentioning about the colleague of mine. Actually, the story is that very simple. The lady that her name is Cassandra Phillips. She was I met her during the pandemic, and then she's a mentor for a lot of these disadvantaged youth in Atlanta. So I told her, I was visiting from Silicon Valley at the time, and I said that, why don't you introduce the technology? So I tried to introduce the virtual reality VR, and then we use a new neurofeedback. These two things from a NASA, actually came from NASA neurofeedback system. I introduced those two concepts, and then introduced her, and he supported her a little bit, and with the doctors and other people. And then she took it really serious, and then really implemented that into the community. Now she is really doing very well, and then a lot of people. One of the good things in virtual reality, what I see, that somehow visual channels are all occupied. When you see all these computationally busy brain, it reduces immediately the brain activity. It's comes down beta waves to alpha waves. It cools down. So it is a power of technology. We have to use it. Still, you have to practice it. It's not a blessing, as you know. You're a therapist. So I think the practice, as you say, that Joshua is talking about. Can you explain a little bit about that, Jill? And then what is that? Every morning you think about it, and you get up, and then gratitude is one of them. Tell us a little bit about that. How we can reduce that anger and frustration.
So you're talking to me with respect to how we can practice that daily?
I'm asking Jill.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, to piggyback off of what Joshua was saying about his morning routine. So I love that. My favorite thing to say is your brain believes what you tell it. So choose wisely. The brain is really interesting, and you know far more about it, Ramana, than I do. But what you tell yourself, the messages that you send yourself. Joshua just gave a beautiful example of his morning routine. And that is so healthy. And it is something that's accessible to everybody. But I would probably guess that less than 10% of the population actually practices it, utilizes it, or even knows what to do. You know, Joshua says something amazing like that. And they're like, what? Like he does what? And how do I, and why would I? And what does that even look like? You know, it's practicing a mental routine, clearing out space. So I said a little earlier, halfway kidding, you need to empty your trash can. So we are all in today's age, we are all running around, and there is a lot of chronic stress going on. And chronic stress changes your nervous system. It changes your immune system. It causes disease, it causes inflammation. I could go on and on and on. So it's learning how to master your brain so that you can control that chronic stress. So like Joshua said, when you leave your house and you're on the way to the office and, you know, there's a jack wagon that cuts you off on the freeway, you're not going to lose your temper. I wanted to say something else besides jack wagon, but you know, I'm being PC. But you're not going to completely lose your cool, right? Or the guy next to you isn't going to pull out his Glock, which I've seen happen, and follow you to your workplace. So mastering this. And when I suggest that you guys take out your trash can, it's just a different way of saying what Joshua just explained about his morning routine. It's like, clean out your chronic stress, because what happens when we keep shoving it down and shoving it down and shoving it down in a trash can, eventually it overfills, right? And we can't. So if you take frequent checks, and that could be with somebody professionally, it could be just downloading with a friend, it could be writing. I have a mentor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he always says, write it, say it, or draw it. But do one of those three things,
Right.
because it's not going to clean itself out. Right. So just getting yourself in the right headspace before you start your day, and then having faith that you are capable of going back to that space anytime during the day that you want. I don't care if your boss just came down on you and threw away your entire project and told you to start over again, or is forcing you, you know, to work 3 hours late tonight, and you feel it coming and you know it's coming. It's knowing that you've just learned that coping skill. You can go back to that space, whatever that is. Write it, draw it, say it. Right? What's your thing? Uh-oh.
Yeah. Sounds a little different, right?
You got sped up, buddy. I don't know what's happening to your audio, but you are really sped up. Dr. Dick. We can't hear you. Uh-oh. Remember at the beginning of the hour, Joshua, did you hear him when he said he was going through technological trauma?
He did.
I think
He
he's going
did.
to end in technological trauma as well. We may
Yeah.
have to do an intervention at the end of this, right?
Yeah. So for sure, you know, one of the lessons learned is that some of the trauma is cyclical. And as I mentioned, we've got to be prepared for it. And when it happens, what do you do? What do you say? And so here's an example of that. You know, if we've seen it one time, how do we react? How do we respond in the appropriate way? And so you know, it's just one of those. But I really love what you say about emptying the trash can. I love that's just the simplicity of it.
Right.
But you're exactly right. And I think that, you know, when folks don't have the ability to take the trash out, it becomes a problem. And I'll tell you a story about the current climate. I just was at Comcast with NAMIC, the National Association of Multi-Ethnicity and Communications, I believe. And they gave an example of this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion. And it was about the trash can. And what they said is that here's what equity is. It's when the trash in my neighborhood is picked up just as frequently as a trash in your neighborhood. And what they seen was that in studies, some folks who were complaining about their garbage not being picked up, it was not only being picked up, but perhaps twice as fast as some other neighborhoods. And those other neighborhoods might have been those who were acting out and having a lot of challenge because they were not emptying their trash. And
Mhm.
so it's just an example of exactly what you're saying. If you're not able to empty the trash, it bleeds over and leads to so many other different
Yeah.
things.
Agreed.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Is it
hi. He's back.
You're
Yes.
back. Yeah, Joshua, I wanted to ask you the final question. There's a question before we close this one. Actually, I want to present something hidden violence about the exposure of lead in the. Actually, I have a. If you have time, 20 minutes. Do you mind if I present? You have a time for you, 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to present a topic on hidden violence. That is a scientific one, but you all can comment on it. So I'm going to present that thing if you don't mind. So I will put you in there, and you can join that. Let me just that I'm going to this. Let me know what if you have problems hearing me. This is yeah. That's a Joshua Bird and Jill McMahon, the therapist and a teacher and educator. What else you need? That's all you need. So let me that is the I always think the public health concern in the gun violence is, even though I don't know much about it, I have to do it because that is always I thought that is. But anyway, these are the people. Let me give you some kind of a background, a little bit hidden violence. I'm going to talk about hidden violence for children or everybody. That Claire Patterson is a Claire Cameron Patterson, 1948. He was trying to find the age of the earth. You know, so what he did was he was digging all the way into the earth, inside the earth, to find a zirconium crystal. Zirconium was formed during the beginning of the earth. So he wants to find out the age of the earth. What he found out is something strange. What he found out is that there is a lead inside. There is not supposed to be lead. Lead that you talking about, leaded gas. Lead was inside the zirconium. He was shocked that all the way inside the earth crust, there is a lead inside the zirconium crystal. Then he started testing it. He tested the water, all the washings with the lead. There is a lead content in the water, lead in the soil, lead in the air. So is a lead is everywhere. He was wondering where this lead came from. So that is the 1950s. What they did was to reduce the knocking problem in the cars. They added a lead to the cars. 1950 cars, all of them are leaded gas. Indianapolis 500 won the competition, all the leaded gas cars. So that's why these cars that filled up the entire planet, those cars filled up the entire planet with the lead. Believe me or not, that is so poisonous, lead. So lead explosion came in. There is a now they allowed the lead. It went in the batteries, then the paints, in the cosmetics. You put a lead everywhere to shine. But that is what this is I want to tell you about that. A lot of people, MIT and Yale University, are telling us there is a big problem with this lead, and they didn't pay attention. The proponents of the ethyl corporation, which is making gasoline, they said that, oh, there's no problem at all. So it is the problem with the lead is actually scientific problem is it is a lead mimics the calcium ion. So it doesn't know, the body doesn't know the difference between the calcium and lead. So it doesn't know how to get rid of it. That's a problem. So it will pile up in that one, and it affects the biological. It's a serial killer of the lead is a serial killer of the human body. It interrupts the biological and the signaling process, and eventually it affects the metabolic process. So the autism and all those things, signaling proteins that affect it. The worst thing is actually placenta. Expecting mothers, that placenta is a very weak state. It goes to the placenta much easier to the expected mothers, the lead. Okay, so then the worst devastating effects on the lead on children is a myelin, the sheath on the insulin that is the cover the nervous system, that the neurons that affected the myelin is actually is broken. That's the lead is making them taking those myelin sheath. So 50 year of environmental disaster was happened in this because of the leaded gas and leaded products. High school dropouts actually related to the Journal of Medicine, JAMA, very prestigious magazine, said that 1951 to 1980, because 1980 they reduced the content of the lead. The dropout, high school dropout, is correlated with the lead content. Not only content, the violent crimes are related to the lead. The lead is connected with as actually there is in JAMA studies are done, and the violent crimes are connected with the lead content in the brain, lead content in the body. So it's not only here, all over the world, Europe, England, Canada, they did the studies. It is correlated with the toxicity of the lead. So the CDC immediately got into this action. So there is Alice Hamilton, the doctor from Chicago, Hull House. If you are from Chicago, Hull House is like a very progressive people. Jane Addams, all those people that they were doing. She was the really warrior for the children, and she was a really became a warrior for all this lead, and she started occupational medicine department, industrial safety, and all these people in the dumping in the lead content in the sidelines in the south side of the Chicago. She was a very opponent of those kind of things, and she was really toxicology. She started it. She was a warrior, and she passed a lot of laws. That's because of her. CDC. These are the lead contents right now. In the China is one of the highest. The Nigeria is a 45 microdeciliters is a microgram per deciliter is one of the highest, and then Bangladesh is one of the highest. These are the only less than 5 micrograms per deciliter is allowed actually. That is a safe content. CDC says. Now CDC is saying that the way we test the lead is urine. You can go to the blood, hair, and X-ray. You can find out the lead poisoning. Chelation therapy. There is not too much of treatment there. You have to do chelation therapy or diet or calcium ion is a little bit complex. It's not a CRISPR. Maybe it's coming in the future of the gene editing, but it's a very complex. Prevention is the best. So there is another lady, Dr. Mona Tista. She's from Detroit, Flint, Michigan. Actually, there's a lot of lead came in the stop war. She wrote a book called Stop War Against Children. So there's a lot of lead problem. It is a CDC realizing that, and then they continuously reduce it. Now they don't allow zero lead now. They cut down from 1962 is a 45 to 60 micrograms per deciliter to now zero. They say that now CDC says that zero lead is better. So that is really, we need heroes, and this is a kind of a hidden violence on the children, on the people, on the lead that environment created, the lead poisoning, that the leaded gas created, that still we are reeling from that effects. Thank you for watching. Let me get back all these my guests back and see. Let me see what they say. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I do present a topic in general. Do you know anything about lead poisoning, guys?
I do now.
Yeah, it's a big problem in lead poisoning. Is connected with the violent crimes, and is connected with education dropouts, all kinds of things. We always say that only societal problem, family problem is a lot more, sometimes much more bigger systemic problem there. So that is a lead. But anyway, I wanted to finish the talk with you guys, and what you're really warriors, both of you. Jill, that both you experienced the violence. Then you're the better ambassadors for the gun safety and violence. In fact, I think people like you. We need more and more. We need to raise the voices and then bring to the front lines. Even the doctors don't know much about all these things. That's why Joshua did this seminar and therapists and people like that. You need to really raise the voices, and then even healthcare professionals should know. My audience are mostly healthcare professionals, so they know to recognize the suicidal thoughts, they recognize the violent thinking, all those things we need to recognize. Thank you for joining, guys. Thank you for, it's truly an honor and privilege to have you, both of you. So I give you final words for both of you. Joshua, go ahead first, and then next is Jill.
Yeah, I just say again, thank you for having me, Ramona. It's been a pleasure. Jill, it's been a pleasure learning about you, your story, and all that you do. And this is an issue that impacts everyone. And so, for those who may feel as though gun violence, that's not for me, it's impacting all of our youth across the country. It's impacting all of our adults, and it's something that does not have to happen. And so, with that being said, again, I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier. We've seen what effects seatbelts have had on saving lives. We've seen what effects the smoking bans and no smoking here and in restaurants, what those have had. We saw how effective the government was in reducing incidences of the spread of COVID-19 with respect to social distancing and just public behaviors. And we're just asking and advocating for the same with respect to gun violence. If we can pump and if we can have the same amount of resources behind reducing deaths related to gun violence, that's what we're all about. Yes, there are things that we can do as individuals. There are things that we can do as communities. There are things that organizations are doing. But to be most effective, we need all hands on deck, including the federal government and the state governments. And so that's one of the things that we're calling on. Outside of that, everybody and anybody who's wanting to get involved and willing to, we need your help. And so I thank you for allowing us to use this platform to just share the word and the information to the community, and look forward to future collaborations and partnership. And thank you again, Jill, for all that you're doing. So Ramona and Jill, just thank you all for this opportunity.
Jill, Jill, go ahead.
Gosh, wow, it's hard to follow that. I want to speak specifically to those that have been impacted by gun violence, and as Joshua and I just educated you, there's been quite a few of you, and I see you. And that isn't just the direct victim. That isn't somebody that has looked a gun in the face. I'm talking about EMTs, and I'm talking about first responders, and I'm talking about emergency room doctors, and I'm talking about the apartment cleaning crew that has to come in after an event and and clean up. I'm talking about, hello?
The janitor.
Okay, can you hold on to this a second, please?
Yeah.
Knock at the door. It's way too late for that. I don't even know if Ramada is still with us, but I'm going to continue. Close this up. I'm talking about anybody who is sitting next to, holding the hand of, and not knowing how to support. And I'm talking about us young mental health professionals that might feel ill-equipped to deal with a population that is growing. There is real support out there for you, and there is real joy and ease on the other side of this. So, giving back is a great way of healing. Find Joshua and or create your own efforts wherever you are. Joshua, this might be up to you and I, buddy, because I think our gracious host is gone.
Now that's excellent. So yeah, for sure. Let's connect. Let's see how we can partner in the future.
I would love that.
We have a 100 chapter in Atlanta. We've got a couple of North Atlanta, South Atlanta, DeKalb, all over America, internationally even. And so there are some chapters out near you. I think we'll be able to collaborate here soon. And for sure, let's see what that looks like, and look forward to a future partnership and collaboration for sure.
Thank you so much. Sorry
about that.
I have
us together tonight.
Yeah, I have a lot of technical problems today. I'm sorry about that. But thank you so much for joining for us. Thank you so much. I really it's truly an honor and privilege. Good night, all of you.
I appreciate your trust in us. Have a great night, everybody.
All right.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.